All right, everyone, welcome to the Safe Spaces Pod. Today's a big day. I have officially gotten a bachelor's degree, so I'm no longer going to be facially anonymous. And we've got a good guest for you guys today. Cole, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Scott, thanks for having me. My name is Cole Prowitt-Smith. I am a sophomore, soon to be junior at Williams College. I play men's basketball there. Scott and I, we grew up playing together. Sort of the Wilton Fairfield, Connecticut rivalry was in the works a little bit, but no, happy to be here. Always excited to catch up with Scott and excited hopefully to see him very soon as we sort of get out of the academic year this year. So yeah.
Definitely, yeah. No,
Wrap it
so
up.
when do you think we actually met? I know we played in AAU against each other. You were on that PhD team, and I was on that
Yeah.
Connecticut team, like fourth grade. So I think that's
Oh yeah.
when we first met, but that's a while ago. Like that's got
So
to be.
that's a while ago. I think that does mark kind of the beginning of us knowing each other. And it all started. It's crazy. And maybe we'll get into it, but talking about how um, connected the basketball world is and sort of the relationships it's enabled in my life is in part one of the more valuable things I've gotten from basketball. But yeah, I think when we probably first were around each other was fourth grade. So that's 7 years old, 8 years old. First kind of interactions with AAU and travel basketball. And then I think it got kind of more, we really started to get to know each other when we started playing on the same team. I think that was before ABC, but definitely ABC. And, with Coach Cremens, Paul Cremens, great guy. And just kind of going through the college recruiting process together. I think that's when we really got close. And then of course we have a ton of mutual friends through basketball and other things. So yeah, man,
No, and
great.
that's the best part about that team that we were on, that ABC team you mentioned, was there's some good guys. Like
Oh,
not
great
not
guys.
just great like basketball players, but great people. And like
Totally.
I think the outcomes from that team are a testament to the type of people that are on that team. Like everyone that
Yeah,
was on the team is doing stuff and like
yeah,
we're all doing it the right way too.
right. And it's, yeah, I mean, that was sort of the aim of ABC. It's as funny as much you could joke about it as you want, but it really was, it had the priorities in the right place. It was use basketball and our whatever talent we did have coming out of the southern Connecticut area, and put it to good use. Go to a good school and use it to further your academic career and like Harvey Rubin always says, jobs. So we always had that sort of end goal of developing the men we wanted to be, and sort of the careers we had. So I definitely appreciate that, especially looking back on it. And exactly like you said, I think it was a really special group of not only talent, and I think we had a special year in itself of that sort of my year, the year above us. We were originally in the same year, but of course, transferring and all that, kind of. But that little like 3 year stretch of basketball players. So I guess the graduating class of like 2018, 2019, and then maybe like even 2017. There was some really good basketball coming out of Connecticut, all guys that we were close with.
Definitely. And so you brought up going to a good school.
Mhm.
You obviously landed at Williams, one of the top like academic institutions in the country. Like, how's your experience been? We've had people that have gone to Williams on the pod before. Everyone has
Okay,
different
cool.
opinions. So how do
Yeah,
you like now 2 years in, kind of like 2.5, given the COVID
right.
year? Like, how's your experience been?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking. I'm interested to see how it kind of compares to other guys that you've spoken with. But it's a really unique and special place. The first, I think, immediate point I have to make is the academics are no joke. That takes precedent here. We have like I live with six guys. Luckily, they're sort of all on the basketball team with me. So we have this sort of special same schedule, similar schedules. So we all are kind of going through it together, and we, like I mentioned, we live together. But like the doubleheader games to like 2 nights in the library till 3 a.m., like 20-page research project. Like I think at other places there's really ways to avoid that, whether by taking different classes or whatnot. But here it's like that's unavoidable, and you're held responsible to really balance and excel academically while athletics is going on. So I think that's something that I appreciate, but it's also difficult at times because we're located in the northwest corner of Massachusetts. It's in the Berkshires, and I don't know how much you know about sort of northwestern Mass, but there's not much out here. There's, no city to go to. Luckily I'm, two and a half, a little more than that away from home in Connecticut. But for a lot of these guys, like we're really out here by ourselves, and it's just us, the team, basketball, academics, and a really long winter. So it's a difficult place to be, but I'm so appreciative of the quality of people I'm surrounded by and the goals that I'm surrounded by. Seems like everyone's really ambitious and sort of cares about the right things and is morally aligned with their ways of getting there. So all goes to say, great people, incredible school, incredible faculty, so many resources and opportunities. And yeah, I think that I can say I absolutely made the right decision in deciding to use basketball and all the work that I put into that sport to allow myself an opportunity to look at and then end up choosing to go here. And I met some of my best friends, of course. I'm sure you had a similar experience at Colorado College. And funny enough, I actually think that like geographically and academically, a really good comparison to Williams. And honestly, looking back on it, like I probably emotionally would have been more happy at a Colorado College just because I think the atmosphere would have been a little more copacetic to my likes and interests and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned like not having a city, like Colorado College, like you have a city. Like we have a 0.5 mile walk to downtown Colorado Springs, and it's got
Which is beautiful.
restaurants, bars, and like I'm kind of a fraud. Like I've never skied out here. I don't go on many hikes. I've been on a few, but I like there is something for everyone in Colorado, and the golf is amazing out here too.
100%. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that because I think what's sort of interesting and maybe people listening don't know about me is that basketball has been a really dominant player in my life and but sort of the other half, the more like unknown and less maybe public and more my family and closest friends know, is that like I'm a really big environmentalist and sort of adventurer. I love, you mentioned skiing. Like I grew up skiing Vermont, and I've skied out west a couple of times, not enough, but a couple of times. So like that's sort of a part of my life that I hold really important to me and that I get a lot of sort of peace and joy from. And we're surrounded by that up here. It's just a long winter and like, yeah, anyways, all goes to say that I think Colorado is an awesome place. And to sort of have everything that you had, the basketball, the great academics, I'm sure unbelievable people around you, and being in beautiful Colorado Springs, like that seems like a dream to me. So anyone listening that's interested in sort of going through the college process, I would say think about the type of people you'll be around, think about the balance between athletics and academics, and then think about location. Location's sneaky important. The fact that it's cold and wet and rainy here most of the year, we all talk about it. I think being in somewhere that's geographically a nicer climate region would be really, really nice.
Definitely. And so you brought up the environmentalist like side of yourself. And that was one thing I wanted to touch on. Sure. So last year you had the internship, and I know we briefly talked about this summer, but it was something you were passionate about. I think a lot of it went over my head. Do you mind like elaborating a little bit about what you did last year?
Yeah, no, thank you again. I think I mentioned it too. So I was working with a company called C Combinator that has recently rebranded into Carbon Wave. So I guess the sort of backstory is I'm an environmental science major at Williams College. And through this experience with this company you mentioned, that was 2 years ago. I took time off for COVID. I was able to do that internship for a full, I think, 9 months. And that really sort of influenced and encouraged me, maybe not encourage isn't the right word, but sort of motivated me to really be confident in pursuing the world of combating climate change. And I would say that I feel pretty solid in my thought that I'd like to pursue a career that's sort of at the intersection of climate science, business, and technology, and the innovative stuff that's emerging right now. So yeah, I think a career that's sort of combines battling climate change and then enabling sustainable development and sort of that transition to a decarbonized economy. Because I'm not sure how familiar you are with climate change, but what's really driving it is a huge imbalance of CO2 in the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases. And through like industrialism of the past, century and a half, we've really disrupted and overexhausted the planet. Like the planet gave us this like perfect era for us to thrive and for the population to boom and for us to, exploit really the resources that we have. And we've done so successfully that we've really changed the sort of framework that's allowed us to have success here on this planet. And it's like, it sounds like sort of brainy stuff, but I think everybody in the next 100 years needs to be intimately focused and connected to this issue in whatever sector of work they do. So I hope to be sort of in between the business and science side of that. So anyways, all roundabout way of saying Carbon Wave is the company that is based on carbon sequestration and avoidance. So what that means is drawing down carbon out of the atmosphere. And the sort of sciencey way to quickly describe that is like trees, for example. We all know they're good for the environment. What they do in their sort of growth chemical equation, it's called photosynthesis. They take energy from the sun, they sort of take up CO2, turn that into energy to promote their growth, and then sort of the end product of that is them releasing oxygen back into the air. So carbon sequestration is that system of capturing and storing carbon dioxide in this case, into sinks, into like these global sinks that we have on Earth. And so the motto is based on that, and it's all about what revolves around seaweed. So essentially the end goal of the company is to, it's really sort of sounds like an out there concept, but they're doing amazing things and have it in such a structured way. But so we're taking away so much of the Amazon rainforest. Imagine being able to replant something twice the size of the Amazon rainforest in the ocean, and that being seaweed. So anyways, I encourage anyone to check out Carbon Wave. They're making some really cool products from seaweed to sort of drive revenue for this bigger plan, but all really cool stuff. And yeah, like climate solutions, that's definitely what I'm interested in. Sorry, so, you can please ask any questions. That was a poorly articulated way of describing that.
No, for someone like myself, and I like, admittedly, I don't know a ton about the climate.
Yeah,
like
no worries.
What mediums do you use to learn about it? Like as an environmental studies major, what are you reading? What are you consuming to like gain more knowledge of the like subject matter?
Yeah, I think something that's cool about, and I realized my explanation was really like, had some buzzwords in the environmental world, but for the average listener, that probably didn't make too much sense. But it's so this idea of carbon, and there's a few main things, but the overarching idea is that human caused activity is driving a complete imbalance of the atmosphere, and that in right now and in 100 years, 200 years, so we're talking like within the next couple of generations, like the Earth is going to start like facing like some serious problems. And to answer your question, environmental science is a really interdisciplinary sort of area. So I think it's through politics, through literature, through research and analysis of legit sort of like empirical studies and empirical research. This is all sort of stuff I'm engaging with in classes, but also through this experience I had with the company. I was working as sort of a business development, in a business development role for them. There's just sort of, I do my own research. I try to read a lot. There's a sort of this governing body called the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's sort of a leading body producing really like outlines and summaries of the issue and solutions. So all those sort of things that I'm engaging with. Yeah.
What science area would you say does the most like empirical studies that you were referencing? Like, is it biologists? Is it so mostly biologists, you'd say?
No. So, well, I think again, it's a mix, because this is something that's influencing every area of science, really. there's like climatologists, there's paleoclimatologists that are looking at like ancient records within the earth to compare. But yeah, without getting into the nitty gritty of it, it's a really wide ranging issue that a lot of people are doing research on. So you see an article about climate change coming out every day in the New York Times, Washington Post. So it's something that's easy to follow, but I think one of the main goals over the next, like, I would say 10, 15 years is to like really break down and talk about climate change and this issue in a way that's digestible to the common public. And that's something people are working on. But anyways, I kind of want to ask a question back to you. What are you planning? And maybe you talked about this before on the podcast, but what are your plans for after school?
I'm gonna do some financial advising in the beginning.
Okay,
So
cool.
I tried to get into the Marines and I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
qualify medically because
Mm,
I took too much Advil before a game
really?
and I just burned a hole back in my stomach. Like I already
No
had
way.
like, stomach problems, and then I just like took 5 Advil and then played a game and so
Right.
that so I had to readjust the plan a little bit.
Okay,
But yeah, no, I'm gonna be home. I'm gonna be
nice.
commuting into the city, and I'm gonna be learning like I think honorable craft. Like I think helping people with their financial situations is something that
Definitely,
is
definitely.
necessary one and I think fulfilling. So I'm excited to go into it again. Like
Yeah.
I'm 21, so everything's pretty
No,
fluid.
dude.
I could
Everything's brand new, and I think that what I kind of get caught up in is like I have this pretty niche goal and direction in what I want to do and what I'm interested in, but like it's okay for people in our position to not know what they're doing for like the next 5 years. So I think that like just getting your like, you know, feet in the water and learning about something. And I think finance for a lot of my peers, especially at Williams, like that's a great starting point for them to learn about business and sort of all the implications of wealth generation and investing. And of course, that's such a versatile world. But then taking that and like saying like, oh, I'm really interested in, you know, some sort of more specific field, and then using that skill to kind of get there, and then you kind of fuel your internal purpose and feel like you're doing something with your career. I think that's the ultimate goal of all of us. And, you know, that's
yeah.
really cool. So I'm happy to hear you're going to be back in CT a little bit. So
Yeah,
we'll
no, I'm
hopefully,
excited. Definitely a
yeah,
bunch of
hopefully
Yankee
we'll get
games
to
in the
get together.
future. We'll definitely play some
Yeah.
pickup. But
Oh, definitely.
dude,
That's
and
dude.
pick up basketball is key, man. Like now that I'm done hooping, like I still play
Stay in
4 days,
shape.
and it's the
Great.
best workout known to man.
It literally is. It literally is. And I think a sentiment that I want to share on the podcast is how much fun that you and I have had playing summer pickup, growing up doing that, man. Like that, there are so many like really cherished memories that I have of just like getting groups of guys together and running competitive pickup. And especially with all of us playing college basketball, we wanted to really work on our games. So I think that was just amazing. Yeah, I really like smile thinking back to those times, and me, you, Tonio, Charlie, like
No, there that one in particular, that one during COVID where
yeah,
we went to Antonio's house and played twos on
right, just
in
in
his
a
front yard.
driveway.
And his neighbors were like, apparently they asked him, they're like, who were those kids? Like that was like a really good game of
Oh
2v2.
yeah, no, it's funny. It's really funny. Like, and that's I think that speaks to one like you can utilize literally like your driveway if you want to get better. Like that's something that's great about basketball. You just need shoes and a ball and a hoop, and then the other thing is that there's like a lot of talent in our area. I think, you know, there's so much talent that like I think teams coming out of and underrated talent really. There's so many guys right now coming out that it's like, damn, like in a different world, like you'd be getting high major looks. And a perfect example that I kind of want to plug that I got to train with and sort of talk about is this kid Jack Malloy from Brunswick. I'm sure you know of him, right? And I think he's struggled with maybe a little bit with injuries his freshman year at Yale, but he's at Yale now. And dude, this kid he's 6'8", athletic, can shoot it. Like, I don't know, like his body type is a high major body type. It is like, and it's, and maybe like, you know, I didn't know him early on and what his development was like, but like that's such a sneaky rant. Like, I didn't even really know about this kid. We used to beat GFA. I was in his league in high school. We used to beat up on them all the time. But it's like, now I see this kid and I'm like, damn, like this is legit competition, and he's killing it. I'm wishing him all the best for sure.
No, a cool thing about him too is like he's always been pretty good. Like I used to
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I used to do the scoreboard for Willen.
Mhm.
So I would see him come through like when he
Right.
played for Greenwich. And like he was
Yeah.
like a shooter. But then he
Yeah.
like grew into his body and actually like his athleticism matches his like size too. Like he has
Yeah.
like high major D1 size and high major D1 athleticism, I would say.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. So yeah, it's interesting. So give me some updates, dude. We haven't caught up in a little bit, but how did your senior year go? It was cool. You enjoyed it?
It was solid, man. I wish we won a little bit more. And like
Right.
for our listeners out there, like when you're on a team where you think you have a chance to be good, like please go all in because you're not gonna
Never
regret
regret that.
gave it all you had. And like that's why I don't have any regrets about this year. Like I truly tried my hardest and I put myself in a position to play my best basketball at the end of my senior year. And that's really all like I could ask for because I put a lot into the sport. But no, yeah, it's tough. We were rebuilding. I had two coaches here. And like those are all excuses too. That's like I want the listeners to know. Like at the end of the day, like the excuses don't matter. It's like whether your team won or not. Like every team goes to the locker room and has the exact same conversation every single game, no matter who you are. And I'm grateful to have been a part of so many of those conversations. It really forced me to try to be a better version of myself. And I just enjoyed playing with my teammates. Like I got suspended last year, so I didn't know what my year was going to look like. And I'm just like grateful that I just got the opportunity to play in every single game in college and really meet some great people and like
Right.
it forces you to like go to a different place. Like when you're on the basketball court, like you're not like I wouldn't be interacting the way I'm interacting with you now. Like
No,
it's not
definitely
like a
not.
Hulk thing. I'm not trying to like overestimate it,
No,
but it's an
no.
out of body experience. Like when you're
Yeah,
going, and
you're in the
I'm gonna
fire.
miss that. I'm gonna miss that a lot because I don't find that in a lot of my other life. Like I when I give presentations, sometimes I get that same feeling, but
Hmm.
like it's hard to replace the feeling of getting a bucket
Definitely.
in college basketball.
Definitely. Um, yeah, I mean, I saw a couple highlights. You had some big games this year, like some big moments. And that's sort of, especially for a senior year, to have a bunch of those to be able to look back on and remember. That's all you can ask for, other than what you already mentioned, and that's winning and contributing to team success, because that's ultimately what we'll all remember.
And
Yeah,
it strengthens the bond, I think. Like your team
definitely.
right now, like given your run that you guys just had, like when you
Hmm.
guys go into the locker room after playing pickup in the spring, like you guys
Yeah,
are committed towards competing for a national championship next year. And like
totally.
that's why you play. Like it was
Yeah,
tough being on a team that
absolutely.
I never really thought we could win a national championship. Like I delusionally thought that at times.
Right.
But like because we had a filthy player our sophomore year. Like we had I think the best player in the country my sophomore year.
Mhm.
And but the conversations and the bond you create when you're really just buying into winning, and I think it takes away a lot of the like BS surrounding sports, like the gossiping and stuff. Like when you're winning, you really
Yeah,
can't say anything. Like everyone has to be bought in and like
you're getting it
get
done.
off the train if you want to. But when you're not winning, it's a blame game in a lot of ways, and like it's just
Yeah,
an ugly side of sports, but it's a fact.
yeah. And you never want to be on that. I think that kind of controlling your emotions and never letting it get to the point where you're making excuses and looking to deflecting to other people. Like, you never ever, in any situation, even if it might be true, that's something you hold in. And I think that's something like a lot of players need to understand, that it's never like your reputation and sort of the contagious, I don't know, aura that you give off in the locker room, outside of the locker room, to your coaches, to the fans. Like, that's so important and something that you want to like protect. And by no means should that like limit the dog that needs to come out when it's down to the wire and you need to get a W. But it's something to think about. And I think that's what differentiates good and great players.
Yeah, and
You know,
I tried to portray that to my younger teammates like after the season when I was
it's
leaving.
tough. It's a
I'll
learning
tell them,
thing.
I was like, you know what? I don't regret the shots I missed or the shots I took. I regret the
Right.
times where I didn't feel like I was the best teammate I could be. And
Yeah.
And like that's what you really remember at the end. Like if you put your all into working out, like you don't mind the shots. Like sometimes there's
Hmm.
no fall. It's the way the game
Yeah,
goes. It's a cruel
yeah,
game at times, like
yeah.
a truly cruel game.
Like
But
golf.
if you treat your teammates right, like you're gonna be better for it.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's not easy too. Like when
Within
someone
basketball and outside of basketball.
steals your starting spot, like inherently, like you're inside. You're like, come on,
Like, yeah,
like
I
it's natural to like have tensions on teams, and like I think
totally,
that's why basketball was such a good life experience for me, because now I'm ready
absolutely.
to go in the world. And honestly, like my job, I don't really have a boss necessarily. A lot of it's
Hmm.
like eat what you kill in my own like way, which I learned
Right.
from basketball because I know I don't do great with authority. Like I
Yeah,
learned that
yeah.
from playing basketball, and like I saw it through, and I
Uh-huh.
can now know that about myself, having
Yeah,
done it, but like understanding who I am through the sport.
right,
Cool.
right. Yeah, man. I think the life lessons that I've learned, that we've all learned from basketball, are invaluable. Um, and it's so nice to know that, like, all the time and effort and sweat and tears that you put into the sport, like, the payout is not only just like success in the sport and health and being in shape and whatnot, but it's also like there's such a huge mental part of the game, um, that I think we're spot on, and at least acknowledging, because a lot of people they don't even really get to the point of acknowledging how big of a part that is of the game.
And like, so one thing that I think was a difference between me and you as players is like, I truly did not think I was a good basketball player until this year. Like my self
Mm,
talk, like, cause like there's times where I'll shut down a pickup. Like if I'm on, like
yeah.
I'll shut it down. But then there's
Oh,
times where I don't
easily.
feel like I belong. And like this year, I got in my head and I said, I'm gonna tell myself I'm a good basketball player every day because like I
Well,
put
you
time
are,
into it.
because you always were. You always were. It was just like understanding. I guess it's maybe what you struggled with was like basketball is a team sport and everyone has a role. And maybe by you being like, no, I'm not like a LeBron dominant type player where I can take 1 through 5 and go get a bucket. Like that wasn't your game. And maybe you were caught up in being like, I can't do that. Maybe I don't belong. But like, dude, like with a slashing point guard who can find you at any point when you get a little bit of space off ball, and when you can make something happen, whether make a play for another person or knock down a three with confidence, which you absolutely could. Like, I would be happy to have you on the court at any point, really.
And
So
I kind of my position changed up a lot in college.
yeah,
And like that's another thing I want to tell the listeners. Like craft the way you want to play and work towards it. Like it'll fit in any
yeah,
system. Like this year I played the undersized two because like this year I needed to score. Like I felt almost like a fraud out there at point guard because I knew I wasn't watching enough basketball. I knew that there
hmm,
was guys that found guys better, and I knew I was a score first like type of guy. And I didn't
yeah,
always play
yeah,
like that either. Like even on ABC, I was kind of pass first. So
yeah,
I shifted my game to whichever style would get me on the court. Like my
right,
first 3 years, I needed to play point guard to get minutes. So I played point
yeah,
guard. And then this year I was like, you know what?
great,
I'm gonna play my brand of basketball and hopefully the minutes come.
hmm,
And it happened. And I had my best season, like obviously one with the self-talk and two with like understanding my role. And like again, like you were talking about those conversations. Like in the summer, I would tell you that like, oh, I don't like I'm gonna probably be like a number 3 option. And like it
yeah,
got to a point in the year where like it was crunch time and I had to take shots. And like that's something that you have to prepare yourself to do
you do,
mentally, no matter
you
how you
definitely do,
feel about your spot.
you definitely do. You're right. You're so right, man.
What
That's
so
interesting,
what's
but
your
it's cool.
process like for hoop this summer? Like
For who?
what's yeah, what are you planning on doing?
So I have 2 internships, sort of to circle back to this sustainability, planetary sustainability and climate world. One's a research position, and the other is sort of another business development role with a company actually in Germany. So I'm really excited about that. I think that'll be busy, but very manageable. And then working out, it's going to be hitting the weights a little bit differently. I bulked last off season. I think this season is going to be a little more integrated in like focusing on cardio and conditioning. I know you were locked in with that last year. I should be on that wave. And then, but also staying trim and gaining strength. So there's the workout side. And then basketball wise, I think consistency with my shot, that's always, that's the number one that everyone works on, especially as a scorer. But then I really want to tighten up my handle. I think I have room to improve there. And then defensively, I wanna work somehow. I haven't fully thought it out. sort of a structured plan, but like I want to improve my lateral quickness, my balance, my leg strength, lower body strength. Because like I'm like a hair under 6'4". I'm like 175, 180 when I'm hitting the weights and eating right. So I'm in like, at least in terms of D3 basketball, like depending on how I train, like I have like I think skill wise, you know, I feel very confident and capable. But physically, I think I'm like really in this limbo place where I can either be like a dominant presence or just like, you know, someone that has a good frame, but like doesn't really use it to any particular special use. So I think that being able to play the next 2 years as like a 6'4", 180 strong athletic point guard, like that's a really difficult matchup in D3.
Trust me, I wouldn't want to see that on the scouting report.
Yeah. So I think that's something that I have in mind and I'm working towards for sure.
And so talk to me about your year this year. How'd you feel when I know you had some great games. You
Mhm.
obviously you guys made a deep run in the tournament, which was nice.
Yeah.
I actually I watched your guys NESCAC final game. And
Okay.
that looks like a crazy environment too.
Yeah, man, it was a barn burner. It was a tough one it's a tough one to reflect on. Of course, we went to OT. Um, yeah, man, it was a crazy environment, and that Wesleyan matchup this year was strange. We had a really weird year, to be honest with you. We had so much success, but we had like in the middle of the season a 6-week break we all got COVID. So it was really choppy. We couldn't practice for six weeks, and that really disrupted our flow, I think. But excuses aside, that was a barn burner, and they did everything they needed to, and we had opportunities to take that game, and we didn't capitalize. And I think my reflection of that game in particular was like that I want to change for next year and the year after is like the mental approach of like being fully present there. I feel like I was a little fuzzy, like a little just caught up in the moment. Instead of being like, nah, like let's make something happen and win this game. There were many games this year where I felt like I did a pretty good job at that. But that game, that moment, that environment, I feel like every time you have an opportunity to be there, it's such a learning experience on so many levels. So I think that next year, when it comes to playoff time and big games like that, like this group that we have is going to be really, really like veteran and experienced to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, that was a game that a couple calls different. The ball bounces a different way, and we win that championship game.
And that's basketball,
and that's basketball. Yeah,
it's a cruel game, dude. Sometimes, and like,
no, it really is.
I'm happy my senior year ended the way it did because I was at a place like midway through the season where I was thinking that maybe my whole life I was going to think basketball was a cruel game, and
Yeah,
like you realize that it's not like, and like
yeah,
it proves it to like to you that it's not a
right.
cruel game. It's beautiful at times, and it brings you so much joy and fulfillment. But like, dude, at times it is cruel, and like because you carry it with you. Like when you're like a shooter and a scorer, if you're
Yeah.
shooting bad, like you feel worse in class. Like you'll be sitting in
Oh
class, like, I'm a bum. Like I missed like my last 5 threes.
no, for sure, for sure, it sticks with you. Um, yeah, man, it is a cool game. It's a really emotional game. Um, yeah, you see it all the time, and it's surprising we don't see it even more in the NBA and at the bigger scale. But like with all the eyes on you and the frustrations and refs and whatever, like I'm surprised we don't see people blow up more. To be honest.
And they
But
probably do if we don't see it.
right,
Like even a
right,
guy like Jimmy Butler, like you probably saw that clip. Like he's
yeah,
blowing up at like a coach of the year candidate every year, Eric Spoelstra. And it's not
yeah,
because they don't like each other. It's like they both have opinions on how they think they can win that game. And
yeah,
they're not scared to share them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, man, it's it's interesting.
Are you gonna try to play pro after?
I'm sort of decided on where I stand with that, but I'm absolutely going to sort of evaluate that situation. That's the goal. Because I think, you know, I think I have to have 2 really good years for it to sort of help that case for myself and open those doors. But I do feel as of right now, like kind of where I've proven myself capable of, and where I stand as sort of a prospect for that world. I feel like I'm on track. Um,
And just for young hoopers out there,
Mhm.
can you share a little bit about your mindset? Because I think your mindset's one of the reasons why you're such a good player. Like I think when you go out on the court, like you firmly believe like you're the best player on the court. And like not in a cocky way at all. Like I
Yeah.
think you're very confident in your skills and your abilities and your like ability to impact the game in a positive way. So
Mhm.
can you just talk about that mindset a little bit?
No, totally. Yeah, that's a hard thing, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to like define and refine my mindset. But I don't always feel like I'm the best player on the court, but I always feel like I can be. I guess that's sort of the difference. Um, yeah, I think my mindset is trusting my instincts. That's a big one. You got to trust the work. That's something me and you and Rez talked about a lot. But like the work doesn't lie, and it's a cliche thing to say, but like you're only as good as your preparation. So if you put in the reps and in an empty gym by yourself, you can make or emulate a situation where you're on the line and it's a tie game and there's 10 seconds left. Like, are you making that shot? It's all those sort of situations. And I feel like I've developed my athleticism and my craftiness as a guard in ways that like I'm pretty confident in that like I can go get a bucket, or someone won't be. I have moves that people can't guard. um yeah, so I think it's a blend of like trusting my athleticism, all the work that I put into, and like my love for the game. Like I think growing up the way I did, basketball was an escape for me. Basketball was like a really like an art for me to work on, and get better at. um so yeah, I think that my mental approach, what would be a good like sort of message to leave, I think it's all about confidence and canceling out the noise of everyone else and understanding what you can do to impact that game. And for me, it's making the players around me better. That's always a focus I have. But then also like not being afraid to step up and take over. That's another thing that I had to learn. Um, but then yeah, just being sort of versatile. I think that if my shot's not falling, can I rebound? Can I defend really well? Can I get looks? I really like to pass the ball. Can I have a game where with 8, 9 assists? So yeah, it's figuring out the best way that you can impact the game and make your team, the other four on the court with you, better.
Yeah.
That's as simple as I would say it. Don't worry about I want to have 25. I want to catch a dunk this game. That stuff does not matter. That's not making anyone a good basketball player.
Yeah,
It's
and
how you
even
can
if you have
impact the game.
25, if you have 25 and you lose, like the locker room still sucks. You're not happy after
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
No, and one thing Rez talked about when he was on here was it's not whether you shoot well, like it's whether you're playing well. And that's something I wish I heard like
Right.
before the season. I wish that was a mindset I had in games where I guess my shot wasn't going. Cause like you're one of those players like me. Like sometimes like we just have to like create and go get a buck. Like
Yeah,
that's just how we
yeah.
play.
That's
But when those
right.
shots don't fall, like it's about impacting the game in other ways. And we have worked
Yeah,
enough to be able to do that.
right, right.
And
And that's
for
all
me,
stuff you
that's
can work on.
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that's now the local YMCA's. I'm gonna try to win as many pickup games as I
Hey,
can.
I look forward to playing with you at some of those local YMCA's. We've got some good runs upcoming this summer, hopefully.
Yeah, and no, I so like that run at Middlebrook. Like I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it because it's a little incriminating because it was breaking and entering, and we like had like a we almost like it. It was like an insurrection against the middle school. We had like 30 college hoopers all in
Honestly,
locked gym. It was like to date that's still the best pickup I've ever played in.
yeah, that was a ton of fun, man. I wish it got to we could keep it going longer, but like that just shows the grittiness of like CT hoops. Like we just got some of the best guys in the area and like snuck into like and made two gyms going at the same time a sick pickup.
We
So
actually
that
ran
was
a
a lot of
summer
fun.
camp. Like it was actually a camp. Like we should have
It was
gave out
like
like
camp.
shirts.
Like there was like a winner's court. Like it's so funny. No, that was great, man. That really was.
No, and like that's what I think about like the Northeast especially. And I'm a little upset that my D3 experience wasn't that Northeast D3 experience because I think
Hmm.
all schools are so close and there's rivalries and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But like the Northeast is a small guard like D3 hotbed.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. I couldn't agree more.
Wait, so
And not to plug the NESCAC itself, but like the NESCAC has like serious D1 talent. Like I think pick, the last 20 years since the year, whatever, 2000, let's say. I think just about every year you could pick the top 2 teams from the NESCAC and they could beat teams in the bottom 25% of the D1. I confidently believe that easily.
100 billion in the NESCAC, like you don't have to say it lightly.
Yeah,
Like NESCAC is
right.
legit. And like we
No,
talk
it's
about it a
legit.
lot.
It's legit basketball.
Like I love the NESCAC. Like I'm jealous. Like I wish I could have played in the NESCAC. Like the
Yeah.
NESCAC is the creme de la creme.
hmm
And
Yeah,
even
yeah,
Tony's team beat a D1 team. Like Tony's team went in and beat
yeah.
an HBCU. Like you're
Right,
telling me that like Williams couldn't go down and beat like Coppin State.
right, right. It's the NESCAC has the size, the athleticism, and the structure and skill. It's well coached basketball. It's really defensive basketball. It's hard to score, man, in the NESCAC. When in league play, dude, teams know your stuff. Like they know your go-to. Like it's hard. Some teams play really, really good defense. It's impressive, honestly.
No, and it's fun for you because you're coached by a former D3 coach of the year, correct?
I'm not sure if App was ever coach of the year, but he
Definitely
got some
national champion.
accolades. No, App
Is-
hasn't won a national championship here. No,
Did the
but the
person before
program
win?
the program won a national championship just before the coach before him.
Okay. But no, you like I've watched like some of your games. Like I like your guys' system too. Like you have a lot of opportunity to catch,
Yeah.
have like a side ball screen and like attack off it, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's something we're going to go to hopefully more because that's something I talked to my coach and wanted more of because we do run a really structured like Princeton offensive bench essentially. So it's like, a lot of it's like motions where the big's catching and looking to see a split and he's either hitting the cutter or walking into a ball handoff, but it's like, yeah, I think we're continuously getting better at running it, but within it we're understanding that there's certain circumstances, certain situations like me and Nate, one of my roommates and closest friends, who he is all NESCAC guy this year, had a great year, completely changed his game from freshman year to sophomore year, where me and him in a pick and roll is unstoppable because we can pick and pop it, we can pick and roll, and he can hit the 3. And I feel like I draw a lot of attention coming off of it downhill as a downhill threat or a pull-up jumper threat. So that's stuff that we're looking at really carefully and trying to exploit. But yeah, I think it's an interesting system, and I'm constantly trying to get better at it.
Yeah. And not to pivot too much away from basketball, because I think we've talked
No, let's do it. We've talked a lot of hoops.
Yeah. Like I'm done with hoop. Like I hope I'm so grateful for the game of hoop. But like
Totally.
if I didn't have to play ever again, I'd be okay with it. Like I play strictly for my health now, which is fun.
Yeah. And I think that's a great, like, dude, there's a lot more to life and a lot more important things to life than hoops. It's the connectedness and how it's all connected that I find really fun to talk about.
Yeah, and like
man.
hoops is why we're talking right now. Like the fact that we met each other as groups, and like okay, so I'm this is a complete pivot, but we talk a lot about books on here. Like me and my partner that run this are big readers. Are you have you read anything this year? Like are you a big reader?
Yeah, man. I love reading. I can't say that I'm a big reader, and I'm gonna give you the reason. It's so hard to read for pleasure while you have like 400 pages of reading every week academically. It's impossible, quite frankly. It's impossible to even do that 400 pages of reading when you have assignments back to back and practice from 4 to 7 and then dinner right after, and you're trying to take care of your body. It's literally impossible in this college setting. But I'm really happy to hear that you're a big reader. And yeah, most of the reading I do again is like in the sort of world of climate science and keeping up to date with new companies coming out trying to solve the big and multi-dimensional issues within the world of climate and environmentalism.
Yeah. And no, so one thing I say about reading sometimes is like, especially during the school year, I call it a politically correct procrastination. Like if you're reading a book for pleasure, like it is procrastination, but it's like you're learning and it's good.
Yeah.
But like that's
healthy.
what I love about the liberal arts method. Like I'm sure you're assigned great readings every night. Like even though you're not reading for pleasure, like they're exposing you to some great works. Like I know you probably do a
Absolutely.
lot of environmental stuff, but you probably had some graduation requirements you had to do. Like
Oh,
you'll
totally,
get into
totally.
some like amazing primary text that you just like will stick with you the rest of your life.
Oh, 100%. What's one that I can think of? Um, oh, here's a perfect example. There's a book called, so I was in a class called Africana Political and Social, Contemporary Africana Political and Social Philosophy. Um, Really interesting class. And again, speaks to that like liberal arts design of being exposed to different stuff and really sort of garnering skills that apply to everything, not just a niche subject. And I think that's so valuable in life. But this book it was by Jamaica Kincaid, called A Small Place. And it sort of took the angle of the Caribbean, post-colonial Caribbean, and how their sort of post-colonial identity is shaped and sort of constrains the population there, and how tourism is sort of this ugly beast that drives the economy down there and is something that's sort of a remnant of the colonial days. Um, yeah, so really interesting read. Really, for someone who loves to travel, I think it's a super, it's sort of like a seminal piece to read and understanding sort of the social and racial and um, political history of a lot of the places that, like, we're familiar with. A bunch of people always are like going on spring break to the Bahamas, but it's like, do you really understand the social and political implications of just going and partying down there? Like,
No, no,
it
and
was cool. That was a cool read.
you probably wouldn't have read that yourself too. Like that's
No,
one of the things you'll get assigned that you get exposed to,
right.
and you take what you want from it and you can apply it however you want. But it's good to get that exposure to topics that you wouldn't necessarily seek out yourself.
Totally. Totally.
What do you have any travels set up this summer?
Yeah, man. So I'll be doing this remote internship uh, from June to August. In June, I will be in Connecticut. I think I'll be going out to San Francisco for a little bit to see some family and potentially my old boss. Then in July, I'll be living in LA for a month with my teammates out here. We'll all be working remotely. So we figured, let's spend some time together on the West Coast. A lot of the guys are out there too. So, and then August back to Connecticut. So a little bit of travel for sure.
Sweet, yeah, no, and that's the best part about like remote internships.
Yeah,
You and your friends are gonna go and grind, like do your work,
yeah.
but like as soon as 5 o'clock hits, like you guys are gonna be in
We'll
LA,
be in LA doing whatever.
and it's
It's gonna
good
be
for
a good
people to hold
time,
you
and
accountable too.
that's what. Yeah, yeah. We'll all be holding each other accountable to be working. Earn 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 the fun that we're gonna have out there. So yeah, it's I'm excited, and I think that remote work does really enable that. And it's like, at the end of the day, man, like we're in our 20s. Like this is the time of life that we should be getting out there as much as possible and getting those experiences. Like when we're 80 years old, reflecting on our careers in life, like we're gonna want to have maximized this time as much as possible. And that's something that I kind of hold near and dear. And the other thing that I talk about, and this kind of relates back to me trying to have this career at the intersection of climate science, business, and innovative tech, I keep saying, is because I want to have a career and hopefully lead a life that, like, at the end of the day, like I'm like, damn, like I made a difference. I through my contributions to whatever it is, whether that be a company or science in general, like I want to feel good about my legacy and how I've impacted and catalyzed change for the better. And I think the climate issue is literally humanity's biggest crisis. Like it's the difference between like huge regions of Africa and Asia, and even like the central United States, and being really really ridden with environmental problems that are impacting food and general health. And like it's scary. I could go on and on, but I'll spare this talk.
No, yeah, I I'm interested by the environmental thing, and one time you may need to come back on the pod because so we
Yeah,
mentioned the liberal arts method.
Oh yeah.
So this one guy we had on the pod is like a conservative, like thinker, like a nat conservative. He
Yeah.
has been on like Fox News. He writes think pieces for
Oh
like
cool.
National Review. But it's cool because he was exposed to Colorado College, which is obviously like a very environmentally conscious
Yeah,
school. And
absolutely.
he's one of like the leading minds behind like a conservative plan for climate change and like climate activism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know even what it entails. Like I'm not too familiar with stuff.
I'd love to talk to him and sort of hear his stance. You know, I won't make any preconceived sort of assumptions of it, but yeah, the thing with climate change, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent, is that this is truly a bipartisan issue. Um, it's whether you're Republican, Democrat, like this is literally talking about like whether your great grandchildren will like, depending on where you live in the world, will have like food on the table or not. Like it's that dire. It's the difference between I mean, a random example, but like you can see how this will scale as time goes on. But like there's an island called Tuvalu in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and like I think as of right now, like they're no longer able to grow food anymore because the salt water is rising too much into their land. So their soil is now contaminated. Like they can't provide food for themselves anymore. Like, and they are on the same sea level elevation as New York City. So it's like, think about all the infrastructure change we're going to need to like protect ourselves and the economy. It's so costly. So it's really interesting. But
Yeah, no, and
yeah,
I wish I didn't like start off by saying he was like a conservative thinker because like I think that doesn't do him justice because he does have
yeah,
nuanced opinions. But
right,
no, that's why the liberal arts is so like beautiful though, because he was exposed to all this thinking at Colorado College
right,
and can therefore like help himself like become of value by being different.
totally.
Like not a lot
No,
of
and everyone
conservatives
can
really
contribute.
talk
Everyone can contribute. They just need to have like a basic understanding of the science, particularly how emissions work and how pollution, that's sort of encapsulated by the idea of pollution, and how we're sort of over exhausting our resources. Understanding that like the sort of basic principles that everyone could easily understand. And I'm a much better, I guess, learner in this case than teacher, at least at this point. But like, yeah, it's something that I hope to encourage people throughout my life to care about because they should. It's caring about their grandchildren. Like it really is.
Definitely. No, and it's funny.
Definitely.
So I again I can't say I'm the most like well versed in any type of
Yeah.
environmental policy, but I was born allergic to like dairy and beef. So
Right.
I like to say I'm doing my part because I don't because a
There you
lot
go.
of the emissions come from like dairy farming and stuff like that. And so
Huge.
I've always
I
been
think it's in the range. I don't know the number specifically, but it's like somewhere like between 20 or I don't know, in the range of like 18 to like 40% of admissions in certain areas is like strictly agriculture. So yeah, no, definitely the vegetarian way. And speaking of that, as athletes, vegetarianism is becoming more and more of like a studied and researched sort of method of like maximizing your athleticism and health as an athlete. So that's something that's really cool to talk about. There's so many crossovers, and that's what part of the reason why I like this field so much.
have
And
to
the
do it the right
liberal
way though.
arts,
Like the diet part, like it
you have
cost me
to.
some minutes my sophomore year because I went plant based after watching that
You did,
documentary because I'm a sheep, and I just lost 10 pounds right away, and my game just went out the.
yeah, mm.
But it's
Yeah.
fine,
I
and
mean,
it's because I wasn't getting enough calories. Like you have to
right.
be intentional.
That's just the calories part. Yeah, it's fancy and very complex, but all cool things to talk about.
Definitely. So I want to be time conscious. Like I know you got to move
Yeah,
out today. So first off, thanks for hopping on, and we could stay
dude,
on
this
as
is
long
great.
as you want too. But yeah, no. So I is there anything you want to talk about before we wrap up? Like any areas? Because again, I know you have a ton of interests. You like to do a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I'd love to come on and a different time and catch up with you in the summer and then talk more about it because I wasn't I'll be honest in that I wasn't best prepared to sort of explain my various interests and sort of what I'm pursuing. But yeah, man, no, this was really cool. I'm glad you're doing this. this
It's
is this
fun,
is
man.
dope.
It's
No,
also good
it's
to
cool.
catch up. Like
So
I
cool.
haven't talked to you in months, so like this is
Yeah, no,
perfect
really,
way.
it's been great to catch up, and we'll be in touch, man.
Yeah, and I again, like for the listeners out there, whoever does see this, like I think Cole is a pretty great story. He's doing a lot of cool things, and he's like, I feel like you're a passion oriented guy, whether
Hmm.
basketball, whether like your prospects in environmental studies, and I think the world rewards passion. So I'm happy that like we got your story up here, and again,
Literally.
like, feel free to hop on whenever, and I want you to hop on with this guy too. I feel like that'd be a
No,
great conversation.
hey, man, literally anytime. I'd love to talk about it. I'll articulate myself, be a little more articulate in how I speak about this stuff. But yeah, man, no, this is great. I appreciate you giving me kind of a chance to catch up with you and explain a bit of my story, and my experience here at Williams as a hooper, and reflect a little bit about our life, and how we've connected, and kind of grew this relationship. So it's cool, man. All really good, awesome stuff. I'm glad you're doing this.
Yeah. Well, Cole, be good. Thanks again, and listeners,
Yeah,
thank you
man.
guys for tuning in.
All right. Talk soon, Scott.